Two snaps and a clap. Welcome to Voices of Victory podcast show. I am your host, Mario DeLeone, and today's episode is psychological leadership. So listen up for the first point, because it's just as important as the last point. And if you're here learning how to be a leader, I got news for you. Attention span is the next commodity. It's also the next currency. That means you got to maintain your attention span all throughout my video. Why? Because it's part of being a good leader. And I got some very solid, factual, psychological information to support your leadership journey. So listen up, put your phone away, and follow along. Doesn't matter how old you are. It matters that you're able to follow along and listen. The very first key point we're going to talk about is self-awareness. It is literally the ground level of being a leader. It is crucial. Everything sits on that. That's a foundation. That's bedrock. Because if you can't manage your own emotions, then you can't lead anyone else. You know why? Because your mood becomes the climate in the room. Anytime we hear people say, I'm not in the mood, mood is the biggest discipline killer. If there was a murderer that was caught in the act of discipline, it would be the word mood with a big knife screaming, okay? Now that's a terrible picture, but you get the idea. You have to pause before you start to react. Learn to pause and respond. We got to respond in tense moments that we're going to have. We got to actually take a moment and slow the speech down. This activates the prefrontal cortex of the brain, will allow you to be a little bit more calmer in your approach. After a big meeting, ask yourself the question, is there something that got you triggered, and why? Why did it get you triggered? Learn to be objective. Learn to have metacognition. Metacognition is the thought about the thought. You might be like, what the hell is he saying? I don't understand what he's talking about. The thought about the thought. Let's say you are going to think about your team making a decision on decision A or decision B. They're going to do task A on the job or task B. So you have that thought of which one they're going to do. So the thought about the thought is metacognition. What else am I missing here? Is there something I'm not seeing? Is there something else I should know about these two different tasks? Does anybody else on the teams actually have insight that they can provide me to see the big picture objectively? That's metacognition, the thought about the thought. And that's where it becomes a superpower. You learn to be objective and have a concept of discernment. Now, here's the deal. If you make a mistake, admit the small mistake publicly so your team sees that self-correction is okay. You are setting that example, and hopefully they'll follow suit. Now, let's talk about the next level of things. Let's talk about when you're too quiet at a meeting. You got to understand, when you become a leader, the higher you rise, the quieter your team becomes. Because it's almost like this fear thing that kicks in. And it's really not necessary. The higher you rise, the less truth you automatically hear. You don't want to be in that boardroom and everybody just is quiet and just nodding their head. You don't want that. You don't want that at all. You want feedback. You want interaction. Very crucial. You don't want people to think that everything is fine, dandy, and okay all the time. Ask people, what am I missing here? Can anybody give me some insight to this? And wait for some real answers. Pause. The pregnated pause in public speaking is pause. Look at everybody. Do what I call the 3-point glance. One person, two person, third person. And someone is going to come to an answer at some point. could give a little more time if you really wanted to press them for an answer. That's a functional answer. Assign somebody a challenge on purpose. If you have somebody on the team and you know that they're capable of doing it, feel free to assign them that challenge. It's all about growth. Now, when it comes down to it, reward the people who bring problems early on rather than punishing them. The people that are in the boardroom with a bunch of paperwork on the table and they're organizing all of these papers, they're trying to solve a problem before lunch. Well, guess what? They're going to get a lot more done being honest with themselves versus the other group that buries their mistakes. And when you bury mistakes, you actually create bigger problems amongst the team. Now, why do people bury mistakes? They bury mistakes because of the fact that they're afraid to bring those mistakes to the surface. Sometimes they might be afraid of the leader, so they might fear that. That's where it gets really difficult for people. Spend time listening more. 2 ears to listen, twice as much with the one mouth to speak. Very important. So when we are hearing people out, give them that chance, give them that opportunity, give them the room to communicate. Teams that are collaborative and innovative are the ones who actually give feedback more. Learn to give feedback as a leader and learn to be a feedback-based culture in your business. Very important. And reward those people when they bring that problem to you early, because it shows a lot. It really does. Now, when it comes down to safety in that room, people have to feel safe. It's true. And what we want to do is be genuine about working in a safe environment. You want that environment to be a safe place to work. React calmly if someone disagrees. It's okay for them to disagree. Sometimes disagree brings you close to people. I have a background in court mediation. I'm a trained court mediator. What I could share with you is it's best when two people come to an understanding. Conflict can be very healthy. And sometimes a conflict is what people are not seeing. It's not always what you do see, but it's also what you're not seeing. And when two people come to an understanding, when both parties come to an understanding, that can completely get rid of the problem, especially if there's no more resentment and everybody can move past it like mature adults. So having that ability to see both sides and then come together on a solid point to help them really look at things differently, that's going to be so important. We want to foster that conflict is okay because two people can come to an understanding. It can be healthy. When it comes to argument or disagreement, we'll say disagreement, for example, disagreement could actually be very healthy. It can actually bring you closer to someone. Because what you're really trying to do is gain clarity. Usually when there's confusion in the language and speech, that's when the communication is off. Like bad communication separates people. Good communication bridges that gap and brings you closer. And boundary communication actually creates a boundary to say, this is where I stand, and this is where I'm going to be. And I'm going to stand on that. So you see, communication is supposed to actually bridge that gap. Very important. So when someone disagrees with you, react calmly. Take it easy, right? Thank people for pointing out those flaws, especially if those flaws actually have value. You got to remember, like even a house inspector who inspects a house has a job because they're spotting things that are wrong, right? That's crucial. Some people may not like that criticism, but the fact that they see problems that other people don't, that is like a given superpower. Share your own mistakes so other people feel safe sharing your own. That's my overall point. And, make correction about the issue. Sorry, I'm going to correct you, not on your point, but on the issue itself. You're not correcting the person, you're correcting the idea, right? So that's important. One of my oldest friends, he's a paramedic, he used to say, argue the point, not the person. Okay, and he had a very good way of bringing that across. Now, when it comes down to decisions must be built. And you have to get a lot of buy-in, a lot of data in your reality, a lot of information that's going to drive you in a direction. Decisions come before direction. So, pressure makes people rush, but strong leaders, they slow down just enough to think clearly. And that's the thing, when you go through scenario-based training and simulations, that gives you a mental blueprint in the brain to where you can make that high decision under pressure. So as a leader, every experience you have becomes that mental file, that blueprint in the brain that allows you to make a very good quality decision. And we call that a decision quality as an attribute. Very crucial. Write down those pros and cons before you make that final decision and get the weigh-in of your team. Ask the question, what would make this fail right before you commit? What could go wrong before we commit? And then if there is a major choice and it doesn't need to be answered right away, sleep on it. Sleep on it. Contemplate. Don't think about it. Ask yourself how you feel about that. And then ask yourself, how do I think? What do I think about this? Go to feelings and thoughts. A little bit of both. You're balancing the two of them. It's contemplation at its best. Separate emotion from fact. This is a hard one. This is a really hard one. And we have to state both out loud, which, by the way, facts versus emotion is not an excuse to ignore people's feelings. Like, don't get feelings, emotions, and facts confused. That's not what I'm saying. We have to be able to discern the quality of the two and that people are human beings. Your team is part of you. Everybody works together as a collective whole. Even though I'm like Voltron, I'll form the head. Okay? Now, culture follows what you reward. So what gets rewarded gets redone. What's redone gets rewarded. So a bad behavior, if you reward bad behavior, it gets redone. Okay? Now, good behavior also gets redone. You see? It works in both ways. So we want to promote people who show integrity. That integrity is not just the results. It's not just the results. We call out that good behavior publicly and consistently. And keep in mind, there are people that do not like public praise. They like private praise. And I know leaders that ask their teams, do you want to get praise in public or private? And that's fine. There's people that say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable being praised in public, and that's fine. I believe everybody should shine and everybody should push past that. But if that's their preference, there's no reason why you couldn't meet them at their communication level with that. It's not a big deal. Make expectations very clear and direct. We want it clear, direct, and we want it measurable. And if there's any mixed signals, we may have to aim for clarity. Clarity in communication bridges that gap. When there's confusion, there's argument. When there's clarity, we get to get right through it. So we have to have those correct mixed signals, and we have to correct those immediately when they appear. And that leads us to the last one. Leadership without ethics becomes unhealthy. Your influence builds people up, and it helps people understand why decisions are made. Admit when you don't know something, and keep private conversations private and confidential. And never use someone's weakness against them. You will hurt them. You will hurt them, and you will regret that forever. You will carry that late at night. So remember, good leadership: love, strength, assertiveness. Those are 3 pillars, not to mention discipline. Have a great day. See you on the next video. Thank you for taking the time to follow all the way through this video. Take care.